What I want to talk about today is how rail is not instituted in Australia, not because of a cost basis. Rail is not really any more expensive than building highways. And when you already have the rail corridor, it's far cheaper. Rail is not only cheaper to maintain over the long term, but it's multi-purpose. You can run freight, passenger rail, and even tourist rail. I was in Germany a couple of years ago, and quite often the German trains actually have carriages for push bikes. Rail in itself is 1/40th the fuel usage of the same amount of tonnes on the road. So in other words, to ship 1 tonne of freight or passengers on the road may take 1,000 litres of diesel, but it only takes 2.5% of that to run the same load on a rail. We talk about fossil fuel usage and the impact on the environment. Not only are we looking at the amount of fuel that's used, but the amount of fuel that is chewed up in building the infrastructure for highways versus that which can be used for rehabbing our rail corridor. What we're facing here isn't a matter of cost, it's a matter of political will. But even beyond that, it's quite obvious that when you start looking around the nation, in a country the size of Australia with our disparate population, we really need cheap, efficient and long-lasting transport infrastructure, the kind of which we can't get from highways. I've been involved in the rail industry since 2000 and I've seen many changes. For example, I used to work for Queensland Rail, and even as a government body they used to make a profit. They didn't like to declare it because then they stopped getting their government funding, but they made a profit. We have a situation here in Australia where our politicians don't want us to have the cheap, effective transport, mainly because of those political donations, but also simply because this is the will of the people. A couple of years ago, I actually wrote to one of our local MPs asking why the rail corridor was being torn up, and the response was quite blatant in black and white that it wasn't the will of the current government to maintain or re-establish rail. Unfortunately, what we have here is a situation where we need to demonstrate loud and clear that this is the will of the people, and we will no longer sit by